Can I ask you something? When was the last time you went a full week without hearing your kid's voice? Not a missed call, not a short text. A full silent week where nothing came through at all. Sit with that for a second, because that is exactly where this story starts. My name is Gary Hollis. I'm 67 years old. I put in 32 years at the Clairton Works steel mill south of Pittsburgh. Union man, floorman the last 14 of those years. My wife Ruth passed from a stroke 6 years ago, and since then it has just been me in the house on Brentwood Avenue. Me, the dog, and the kind of quiet that settles into a place when the person who filled all the noise is suddenly gone. My daughter Darlene is 38. She lives in Columbus, Ohio, about a 2-hour drive east on I-70. She has a daughter of her own, my granddaughter Lily, who just turned 8 in October. Lily has her mother's dark brown eyes and her grandmother Ruth's habit of tilting her head sideways when she is thinking hard about something. She collects smooth stones from the riverbank and gives every single one a name. She calls me Grandpa Gary, and I swear I stand 2 inches taller every time she says it. Darlene got married 5 years ago to a man named Neil Pruitt. First time she brought him to Thanksgiving, he drove a new black truck, wore a pressed shirt, and spent most of dinner talking about a development project he was managing down in Morgantown. He smiled a lot. He complimented Ruth's china, even though Ruth had been gone 2 years by then, and that china was mine to use how I pleased. There was one moment at the table where he corrected Darlene mid-sentence, quietly, not mean about it, just a small adjustment, like he was fine-tuning something. I noticed it. Mentioned it to my brother Earl afterward. Earl said I was being overprotective. Maybe I was. I let it go. For the first couple of years, things seemed fine. I drove out to Columbus every 6 weeks. Darlene and I had a standing Sunday call. Every week, 9 in the morning, she would ring while I was making coffee. We would talk about Lily's week at school, what book Lily had decided she absolutely needed, how the weather in Columbus compared to Pittsburgh. It was the thing I looked forward to most all week. Simple as that. Then, maybe 2 years into the marriage, the calls started getting shorter. Then they started getting missed. She would text instead, "Sorry Dad, busy morning. Call you tonight," and tonight would not come. I told myself she was busy. Darlene had a solid job doing accounts management for a property firm, and Neil's contracting business had grown. They had bought a bigger house. People get busy. I told myself that, but I kept a little notebook, habit from my foreman days, always had one in my shirt pocket. After Ruth died, I started jotting down our Sunday calls, just the basics, date, how long we talked, what was said, nothing formal, just a way to feel like I was keeping track of something that mattered. And looking back through that notebook, I could see it plain as a shift log. The calls had gone from 40 minutes to 20 to 10 to nothing. I also noticed something else around that same time. I got a strange bounce-back notification from my old email account, an address I barely used anymore. Someone had logged in from a device I did not recognize and sent a message to Darlene from it. I dug into the sent folder. The email read like me, or it was written to sound like an overbearing father picking apart her marriage, complaining about Neil in a way that would have embarrassed me if I had actually written it, suggesting she was making a mistake, questioning her choices. Stuff I would never say to her, not once in her life. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time after I read that. I did not call Darlene. I thought about it, but I stopped myself. If she had already read it and believed it came from me, calling to say I did not write, it was only going to sound like a man covering his tracks. And if she had not read it yet, the last thing I wanted to do was draw her attention to it. So I did what I used to do when something went wrong on the floor at the mill. I printed it out. I noted the date, the login timestamp, the device location listed as Columbus. I put it in a manila folder, and I set that folder in the drawer of my desk. Then I called Earl and told him what I had found. Earl said the same thing he always says. He said, "Drive down, Gary, just go check on her." I almost did. Then Darlene texted me that same weekend, nothing alarming, just a photo of Lily at the park holding up a particularly good stone she had found. I talked myself back down. I told myself there was probably an explanation. I told myself I would ask her about it next Sunday. I wish I had not waited. The week that changed everything started on a Monday in February. Cold, gray Pittsburgh to Columbus February, the kind where the sky just sits low and does not move all day. I called Darlene at 9 like always. Voicemail. Left a message, nothing urgent, just checking in. I figured she was in a meeting or out running errands with Lily. By Wednesday, I had called 3 more times and sent 2 texts. Nothing came back, not a word. Thursday morning, I called her office directly. The woman who answered told me Darlene had taken personal leave at the start of the week. She sounded careful, the way people sound when they have been told not to say much, professional and tight. I thanked her and hung up. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time after that call. Personal leave. Darlene had never taken personal leave without telling me. Even during the stretches when we were not talking as often, she told me the big things. A full week of personal leave in February with no warning and no call. I opened the desk drawer and looked at that manila folder. I thought about Neil loading that black truck. I thought about the way her posture used to shift when he came home earlier than expected. I thought about 32 months of Sunday calls getting shorter and shorter until they were nearly nothing at all. I called Earl. He picked up on the second ring. I told him everything, the missed calls, the personal leave, the email in the folder. He listened without interrupting, which is not always easy for Earl. When I finished, he said, "Go right now." I said I would leave in the morning. He said that was fine, but do not talk yourself out of it between now and then. I did not sleep much that night. I sat in the kitchen for a while with the folder open on the table, reading that fake email again. Reading it the way I used to read an incident report at the mill, looking for what it actually said underneath what it appeared to say. Whoever wrote it knew enough about how I talked to make it sound plausible. They knew Darlene well enough to know what would sting. That was not a stranger. That was someone who had been paying close attention for a long time. I left at first light. The drive from Pittsburgh out to Columbus on I-70 takes just under 2 hours in clear weather. I made it in 2.5 because of ice near Cambridge. The whole way I kept telling myself there was a reasonable explanation. Medical appointment she forgot to mention. Some kind of surprise she was planning. Something simple that would make me feel foolish for worrying. I kept telling myself that right up until I pulled onto her street. The driveway was empty. Both vehicles gone. The blinds on the front windows were closed. And Darlene never did that during the day. She had loved natural light since she was a little girl, always opening every curtain in the house first thing in the morning. The recycling bin was still at the curb, 3 days past pickup. There was a flyer jammed in the door handle, curled at the edges like it had been sitting there for a while. I sat in my truck for a minute, just looking at the house. Then I got out, I knocked, nothing, knocked harder, still nothing. Darlene had given me a spare key years ago, back when she had her first apartment over on Indianola. I had kept it on my keyring ever since without ever once using it. I stood on that front porch in the February cold, and I looked at that key and I thought hard about whether I had the right to use it. She was a grown woman. She had her own life. There could be an explanation I was not seeing. Maybe I was overstepping. Maybe Earl was right all those years ago, and I never stopped being overprotective. Then I thought about Lily, 8 years old. Dark brown eyes, names her Riverstones. I put the key in the lock. The house was cold inside, not the cold of a broken furnace, but the particular cold of a space that has not had people living in it for several days. The lights were all off. In the thin gray light coming through the closed blinds, I could see a coffee mug left on the kitchen counter, a cereal bowl still sitting in the sink. Small things, but the kind that tell you someone left in a hurry or under circumstances they did not choose. I walked slowly through the kitchen and down the hall, called Darlene's name. My voice came out too big in all that quiet. Nothing answered. Master bedroom empty. Bed made, but Darlene's side of the closet looked like things had been grabbed fast. A few items on the floor, hangers knocked to one side. Neil's side of the closet was neat, completely untouched. I stood there for a moment trying to understand what I was reading. That is when I heard it. It came from down the hall, from the direction of Lily's room. A small sound, faint and steady and patient. A soft rhythmic tapping, not frantic, not desperate. The sound of someone who had been making that sound for a long time and had settled into it the way you settle into breathing when you have been holding still for too many hours. I do not have good words for what happened in my chest walking toward that door. I only know my hand was not steady when I reached for the handle. Lily's room was done in yellow and white. A bookshelf along one wall that Darlene had filled with everything from picture books up to early chapter novels. Her small desk with horse drawings pinned above it because Lily had been obsessed with horses since she was 5. In the middle of all that ordinary cheerful kid color, the closet door was slightly open, and from behind it came that faint, steady tapping. I crossed the room. Put my hand on the closet door, Lily. The tapping stopped. A silence that lasted maybe 2 seconds, but felt a great deal longer than that. Then a voice, small and careful and hoarse in a way that told me she had not used it much recently, said, "Grandpa Gary." I opened the door. She was sitting on the floor of the closet in her blue snowflake pajamas, wrapped in a fleece blanket she had pulled down from the shelf above her. There was an empty water bottle beside her and a Ziploc bag with a few cracker crumbs left in the corner. Her hair was tangled, her eyes were enormous and red-rimmed. Her lips were dry and cracked. When the light from the room reached her face, she squinted and put her arm up to block it. I dropped to my knees on that closet floor. I pulled her into my arms and I held her, and I did not let go for a long time. When I could speak, I pulled back just enough to look at her face. "Lily, sweetheart, how long have you been in here?" She thought about it the way she always thinks about things, head tilted slightly to one side, the exact same way Ruth used to do. 4 sleeps, she said. I think 4 days. My granddaughter had been alone in that closet for 4 days. Where is your mom? I asked, though something in my chest already knew the answer was not going to be a simple one. Lily looked at me with those enormous eyes. Mom said if anything ever happened, I had to go to the hiding spot and wait, she said. She said to wait until someone who loved me came. She made me practice. She paused and looked down at the empty water bottle. She put snacks in. She said the snacks would last. Then quietly, I ran out yesterday. She was not crying. She said it the way kids say hard things when they are trying to be brave about something they do not fully understand. Matter of fact, like she was giving me a report. I picked her up, all 45 pounds of her, and I carried her out to the kitchen. I called 901 with one hand and got her water and crackers from the pantry with the other. I did not put her down the entire time I was on that call. Police arrived in 16 minutes, paramedics 2 minutes after that. They said Lily was dehydrated but not critically. They took her to Nationwide Children's Hospital for observation, and I rode in the ambulance with her. She held my hand the whole way and did not say much. At one point she asked me if I had brought the dog. I told her the dog was home but that he would be very happy to see her. She nodded like that was satisfactory and leaned her head against my arm. At the hospital, I gave a statement to Detective Sharon Reeve, a woman in her mid-40s with steady eyes, and the kind of calm that tells you she has sat with a lot of frightened people and knows how to make them feel heard without making any promises she cannot keep. She told me what they had already begun to piece together. Darlene had been found. She was alive at Ohio State's Wexner Medical Center, 2 miles away in the ICU. She had been discovered the day before by her neighbor, Margaret Slade, a 70-year-old retired nurse who lived in the house directly next door. Margaret had seen Neil loading luggage into his truck on Sunday evening. When she did not see Darlene by Monday morning, she walked over and knocked. Nobody came to the door. She noticed the recycling bin still at the curb. She stood on that porch and she did not walk away. She called the non-emergency line. Officers did a welfare check and found Darlene at the bottom of the basement stairs. Blunt force trauma, left without treatment. Margaret had gone in with the officers, assessed Darlene herself with 40 years of nursing behind her, and stayed right beside her talking to her until the ambulance arrived. Sharon told me the official determination was consistent with a fall or a push, and with deliberate delay in calling for help. Neil's truck had been picked up on I-70 cameras heading east toward West Virginia. He had cleared their joint bank account that Sunday afternoon before he left. $43,000. I sat in a hospital chair in the hallway between the ICU and the pediatric ward for 3 days. I drank bad coffee from the machine near the elevator. I called Earl and he drove out from Pittsburgh and sat with me. We did not talk all that much. Earl has always understood that sometimes what a person needs is just someone else in the chair next to them. What came out over the following weeks was this. Neil had been seeing a woman named Connie Fiske, someone he had met through his contracting work over in West Virginia. He had been planning to leave for at least a year. 8 months before that February, he had taken out a life insurance policy on Darlene for $480,000, forging her signature on the application. Darlene had never known it existed. For more than 2 years, he had been systematically cutting her off from the people around her, monitoring her phone, controlling what money she had access to, feeding her a slow and steady version of events in which her father was overbearing, difficult, someone she needed space from. The calls getting shorter was not Darlene pulling away from me. It was Neil making her believe that pulling away was her own idea, her own choice, something healthy she was doing for herself. And that email, I gave Sharon the printed copy from my folder, the login timestamp, the device location. She looked at it for a long moment and then looked at me. She said this adds account, identity fraud. I told her I had kept everything. She said good. I also met with the insurance investigator assigned to the case, a private examiner named Pete Sargent, who had been brought in by the DA's office. Pete was thorough and unhurried in the way people get when they have spent a long career following money through small doors. We went through what I had. He found a secondary account Neil had been running under Connie Fiske's name, money moved in small amounts over 14 months. Another $28,000 recovered. But the thing that mattered most, the thing Sharon kept coming back to in every conversation we had, was the notebook. 32 months of Sunday calls, logged in my shirt pocket notebook the way I used to log shift reports at the mill. Date, start time, duration, a line or two about what we talked about. It was not dramatic. It was not evidence I had gathered with any plan in mind. It was just what I did because I was a foreman for 14 years and writing things down was how I kept the world from sliding. but laid out in sequence, it told a story that was very hard to argue with. A man methodically shortening a woman's connection to her father week by week over nearly 3 years, until the line went quiet. Sharon said, "This is the kind of evidence that does not come from a detective. It comes from a father who paid attention." I did not know what to say to that. I just told her I wished I had acted on it sooner. Neil was picked up in Wheeling, West Virginia, 6 days after the warrant was issued. He had been heading toward the Virginia state line. I-70 cameras had tracked him the whole way east. Officers found cash and a prepaid phone in his vehicle. Text messages to Connie Fiske were pulled from that phone and handed to the DA's office. The messages covered nearly 14 months. They were introduced as evidence at trial. The trial took place 11 months later in Columbus. I attended every single session. I drove out from Pittsburgh on the days I needed to, and I sat in that courtroom and I watched. Earl drove down for the closing arguments and the verdict. Lily stayed with Earl's wife, Vivian, back in Pittsburgh during those days. She was 9 by then, doing well in school, seeing a counselor once a week that she liked and talked about by name, which I took as a good sign. DA Lois Drummond was methodical in a way I respected. She did not perform. She just laid it out, piece by piece, in sequence. The way you brief a safety review at a mill. The forged insurance policy. The $43,000 cleared from the joint account. The I-70 camera footage. The text messages. The medical evidence documenting Darlene's injuries and the time that had passed without treatment. The secondary account Pete Sargent had traced. The fake email with the login record attached, and the notebook. Lois held it up when she addressed the jury. A small brown notebook, worn at the corners, the kind you can buy at any hardware store for a couple of dollars. She walked them through it page by page on the screen behind her, 32 months of Sunday calls. Dates and times and durations decreasing in a line so steady it looked like something measured in a lab. She told the jury that this notebook was not gathered by investigators. It was kept by a father who wrote things down because that was how he had operated his whole working life. And what it documented without intending to was a man cutting a woman off from her family in increments small enough that each one looked like nothing, but added up to everything. I sat in the third row and I kept my hands flat on my knees and I did not look at Neil. The defense argued that Darlene had fallen accidentally and that Neil had panicked and left, rather than acted with criminal intent. They said the email could not be definitively tied to Neil. They said the insurance policy, while irregular, did not constitute evidence of intent to harm. The jury was out for less than a day. Neil Pruitt was convicted of aggravated assault causing bodily harm, fraud over $5,000, attempted insurance fraud, and identity fraud. He was sentenced to 17 years in a federal institution. The judge used the phrase calculated, sustained cruelty in her sentencing remarks. I wrote those 3 words in the back of the notebook on the last blank page. Not because I needed them to remember, because I needed to be able to read them in my own handwriting on the hard days and know that someone with authority had seen clearly what had been done to my family. After the verdict, I found Margaret Slade in the hallway outside the courtroom. She was a small woman, white-haired, wearing a dark coat. She had attended several sessions of the trial, and I had noticed her but never spoken to her. I walked over and I put out my hand and I told her my name, and I told her that Darlene was her neighbor and that I was her father. Margaret looked at me for a moment, and then she took my hand in both of hers. She said she had heard Darlene's name every day of the trial and was glad to finally put a family to it. I told her what she had done, staying on that porch, not walking away, calling it in, staying beside Darlene until the ambulance came. I told her there were not words for it. She shook her head a little. She said she had been a nurse for 40 years and some things you just do not walk away from. I believed her. Darlene spent 6 weeks in the hospital. The physical recovery moved forward on its own schedule. The other kind took longer. There were months, and I will be honest about this, where something in her was still in that house. Still in those years of being made smaller and quieter and less certain of herself. The body heals in a straight line. The rest of it does not always work that way. Those months were harder than the trial, harder than the hospital. But she came through them. She is back in Columbus now, in a smaller house in a different part of the city, closer to Lily's school. She runs 3 times a week along the Scioto River Trail. Last Sunday, she called at 9 on the dot, and we talked while I made coffee, and she told me about Lily's week. In the new book, Lily has decided she absolutely cannot live without. Lily is 10 now. She still names her Riverstones. She joined a 4-H riding program on Saturdays because the horse obsession has only gotten more serious. A few weeks ago, she asked me, straight out the way kids do before life teaches them to soften things, "Grandpa Gary, are you sad you did not come sooner?" I told her the truth. "Yeah, I'm sad about that every day. She tilted her head to one side exactly the way Ruth used to do when she was thinking something through. Then she said, "But you came, that is the part that matters. I have been a steel worker, a husband, a father, a widower, and a grandfather. I have worked 32 years in heat and noise that would make a younger man quit. I have buried my wife. I have sat at my daughter's hospital bedside, not knowing which way it was going to go. I have held my granddaughter in a closet where she had been alone for 4 days waiting for someone to come. I have sat in a courtroom and watched a man be held fully accountable for what he did to my family. And I have stood in a school gymnasium watching Lily accept a reading award with her chin up and her dark eyes bright. There's nothing in this world that comes close to that. If you're watching this and your kids' calls have been getting shorter, if something about their laughter sounds slightly off, if their posture has changed in ways you cannot quite name, trust what you're noticing. Ask the question even if you're afraid of overstepping. Drive down. Show up. The instinct that something is wrong exists for a reason, and the cost of ignoring it is something I would not wish on any man. Coercive control does not always leave marks you can see from the outside. It works because it is slow and quiet, and because the people it targets get taught, one small moment at a time, that reaching out will only make things worse. If someone you love seems to be shrinking, pulling back from the people who knew them before, that is worth your full attention. Be the one who shows up. I'm Gary Hollis. I'm 67 years old. I have a daughter who is still here and a granddaughter who names her Stones. Every Sunday morning at 9, my phone rings. I pick it up before the second ring. I always will.